I'm here to inspect. HOA rules. Open up now.
This Karen barges through my gate, 3 phones rolling, perfume killing the charcoal smoke, while I'm grilling and my 15-year-old drops her homework in shock. Full access, shed, garden, trees, refuse, $500 daily fines, lien, foreclosure starts tomorrow. She's measuring my oaks like a cop, ready to find me on my land. The gall, threatening my home, my family. I smiled and nodded, let her dig deeper and deeper for 3 months while I quietly gathered ammunition. When the trap finally sprung, she didn't just lose her power. She lost everything she thought she knew about authority. The revenge was absolutely devastating. What would you do? Someone threatens your home with fake authority? Where are you watching from? Parents? Ever had bullies target your family? Let me back up and tell you how this nightmare began. I'm Nathaniel Thompson, 45, divorced electrician who bought this corner property as a sanctuary for me and my 15-year-old daughter, Sophia. After losing half my assets to an ex-wife who thought electrical work was beneath us, I needed somewhere nobody could judge how I rebuilt my life. I'd specifically chosen this 2-acre corner lot because it backed to state forest, complete privacy, space for my electrical side business, room for Sophia's vegetable garden where she could heal from watching her parents destroy each other. That Saturday morning smelled like freedom, charcoal smoke mixing with the rich earth from Sophia's tomato beds. She was teaching her friend Maya how to flip burgers, both girls giggling about some boy drama. The sound of their laughter was worth every penny I'd scraped together for this place. I kept all my important papers, property deed, permits, insurance, filed in the kitchen drawer where I could find them. Henderson from next door brought warm snickerdoodles that smelled like cinnamon heaven, telling me about the neighborhood's glory days when everyone knew each other's names. Her husband Earl showed me which sprinkler heads leaked and warned me about the loose porch board that creaked like a haunted house. "Quiet street," Earl said, rocking in his chair. "Good people mostly, though that Whitmore woman..." He glanced across the street, voice dropping to barely a whisper. "She's got strong opinions about who belongs in this neighborhood." The way he said "belongs" sent ice down my spine. Delilah Whitmore's house looked like a fortress disguised as suburban perfection. Every grass blade identical, flowers arranged like tiny soldiers, security cameras positioned like she was protecting state secrets. The smell of chemical fertilizer hung around her property like a warning. Day 8, she made her move. I'm replacing a burnt porch light when she approaches wearing that fake, concerned neighbor smile, the kind that promises trouble wrapped in politeness. "Hello there. I'm Delilah Whitmore. Just wanted to welcome you and, well, discuss maintaining our neighborhood's character." The pause before character told me everything. This wasn't about property values. She starts listing concerns about undesirable elements and keeping our community safe for families. When I mention my electrician license, stable job with Morrison Electric, clean record, her smile gets sharper. "Oh, you work with your hands. How industrious." The way she said hands like it was a dirty word. "I'm sure you understand the importance of fitting in with established residents." That's when her mask slipped completely. Eyes went cold as January concrete. "Some people," she continued, voice dripping fake sweetness, "just don't understand how things work in neighborhoods like this. But they learn, or they relocate." The threat hung in the air like her overpowering floral perfume. Next morning, the harassment began in earnest. Code enforcement shows up, grass allegedly too high. Day after, paint inspector claiming my trim was deteriorating. Then, mailbox violation for improper positioning. Each bogus complaint cost $75 and half a day off work, waiting around for inspectors who looked embarrassed, apologizing for the anonymous complaints. But day 12? That's when she crossed the line. I come home from rewiring a restaurant kitchen, boots heavy with exhaustion, to find Delilah standing in my driveway. Not on the sidewalk, in my driveway, photographing my house with a telephoto lens like I was running a meth lab. "Ma'am, that's private property." She doesn't even lower the camera. "I'm documenting code violations for the homeowners association. There's no HOA here. There will be, and when there is, we'll have plenty of evidence about..." Pattern recognition kicked in. She targeted people who couldn't fight back. But she'd just made a fatal miscalculation. I'll review these documents carefully, I said, letting her interpret that as surrender. 72 hours, Mr. Thompson. Full land access or immediate compliance proceedings. As her inspection team marched off my property, I could practically hear those crisp deed papers calling from the kitchen drawer. Time to do some homework. 3 days later, Brenda returned with an army. I was replacing a circuit breaker for my neighbor, Mrs. Vanessa, when multiple car doors slammed in my driveway. Through her kitchen window, the smell of her green tea still warm in my nostrils, I watched 5 people march across my lawn like an invasion force. Official HOA land survey commencing immediately, Brenda announced, her voice echoing across the neighborhood. I excused myself and jogged home, adrenaline mixing with the lingering taste of Mrs. Vanessa's bitter tea. She'd been telling me fascinating stories about neighborhood history, but that conversation would have to wait. Mr. Thompson, 72 hours have passed, Brenda declared, clipboard raised like a battle standard. We're proceeding with mandatory comprehensive land assessment. She'd recruited Stan Kowalski, a desperate retiree now sporting an official-looking land compliance officer badge that probably cost $12 at Office Depot. 2 other neighbors I didn't recognize carried surveyor's tape and professional cameras. I'll need to see the specific legal authority for land inspections, I said, pulling out my phone to record everything. Brenda produced a laminated document covered in official-looking seals. Property Access Authorization, Section 4.7. Annual comprehensive land surveys are mandatory for community compliance verification. Stan was already measuring distances between my workshop and property lines, shouting numbers like he was surveying for NASA. They treated my land like a federal crime scene, documenting every plant, every structure, every modification I'd made. That evening, something clicked while I reviewed my basic security footage. Mrs. Vanessa had mentioned her previous experience with property rights disputes, how her late husband always insisted on reading every document twice before signing anything. Property inspections need specific written authority, she'd told me over tea. Not just verbal claims or fancy papers. Real authority means recorded deed covenants with your actual signature. Her husband's wisdom proved prophetic when I discovered Brenda's disturbing secret. My security cameras had captured something far worse than aggressive inspection demands. For weeks, Brenda had been conducting systematic surveillance of my property, not from the street, but from neighboring yards, vacant lots, even Mrs. Vanessa's backyard during her medical appointments. Photos of my workshop windows, my garden beds, shots that clearly showed when Sophia was home alone. This wasn't property inspection, this was stalking. The smell of rain hitting hot pavement filled the air as I watched the footage again. Calculated, methodical invasion that violated every boundary of normal neighbor behavior. Some photos were taken at midnight with flash, documenting our sleeping patterns. I drove to Home Depot that night and invested $800 in a comprehensive security upgrade. 4 high-definition cameras with night vision, motion sensors, and audio recording. If Brenda wanted surveillance warfare, I'd document every illegal move she made. The next morning brought an escalation. Emergency land access demand was taped to my front door, claiming I now faced immediate enforcement proceedings for inspection refusal. Brenda's language had shifted from requests to threats, from suggestions to ultimatums. I called Hannah Rodriguez, the real estate attorney Mrs. Vanessa recommended. Her office smelled like leather-bound law books and fresh coffee when I arrived with my growing evidence folder. "These inspection protocols are fascinating," Hannah said, studying Brenda's documents through wire-rimmed glasses. "I've practiced property law for 15 years and I've never seen anything quite like this." She leaned back in her chair, the leather creaking under her weight. "Legitimate HOA enforcement requires very specific recorded deed covenants that grant inspection rights with clear procedures and limitations. What I'm seeing here, generic inspection demands without proper authorization are typically unenforceable." "So what are my actual legal obligations?" I asked. "That depends entirely on what's recorded with your property deed," Hannah replied, making detailed notes. "HOA authority isn't unlimited or automatic. There are strict legal requirements for property access rights that most people don't understand." My upgraded security system immediately proved its worth. That same week, cameras captured Brenda's team conducting perimeter reconnaissance of my land while I was at work. Stan measuring fence lines without permission. Unknown neighbors photographing my garden beds from multiple angles. Someone even attempted to force entry into my workshop. The violation notices escalated daily. Final land inspection warning. immediate property access required, or face liens, foreclosure proceedings, and potential criminal charges for HOA obstruction. Criminal charges? For refusing to let strangers inspect my private property? But the most disturbing footage came from late-night surveillance. Brenda personally photographing my house at 11 p.m. using flash-through windows, documenting when lights were on, when Sophia was visible doing homework. The sound of her car door closing echoed through the quiet night as she drove away with photos of my teenage daughter. I called Hannah at 6 a.m. the next morning. We need to discuss restraining orders and harassment charges immediately. This has escalated far beyond property disputes. The taste of strong black coffee mixed with cold fury as I realized the truth. Brenda wasn't inspecting property violations. She was targeting my family's safety, privacy, and peace of mind. Time to gather some ammunition of my own. 1 week later, Brenda went nuclear. She rented the community center and mailed official invitations to every household. Emergency, property compliance meeting, dangerous land violations, threatening community safety. The smell of burnt coffee and decades-old carpet assaulted me walking into that community center Thursday night. 30 neighbors packed metal folding chairs while Brenda commanded a podium with professional projector equipment that must have cost more than my monthly electric bill. "We face an immediate threat to community welfare," she announced, clicking to aerial satellite photos of my property. "Unauthorized commercial land operations, unpermitted structures, and hazardous workshop activities violating residential safety codes." My blood chilled. These weren't Google Earth screenshots. They were high-resolution professional aerial photographs with military precision. Red arrows tagged every structure: fire hazard, zoning violation, unauthorized commercial land use. "This electrical workshop stores dangerous chemicals and equipment," Brenda continued, laser pointer dancing across my modest tool shed. "Commercial vehicle traffic destroys residential land values and creates liability exposure for neighboring properties." Mrs. Vanessa's weathered hand gripped my forearm as the crowd murmured disapproval. The texture of her papery skin reminded me I wasn't entirely alone in this public execution. Additionally, Brenda clicked to photos clearly taken from inside neighboring yards without permission. "This property owner has obstructed mandatory safety inspections, endangering community welfare through non-compliance." Stan rose from the front row wearing a new land enforcement coordinator vest that looked professionally manufactured. "I've documented 17 distinct violations during authorized perimeter assessments," he declared with newfound authority. "Unauthorized landscape modifications, commercial equipment storage, potential environmental contamination from electrical waste." The lies multiplied like cancer. My dangerous chemicals were WD-40 and electrical tape. My commercial traffic was my 15-year-old pickup truck. The environmental contamination was Sophia's organic compost bin. But something unexpected happened during questions. When Brenda demanded community support for emergency enforcement measures, only scattered applause emerged from maybe 6 people. Most neighbors shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact with her increasingly aggressive demands. After the meeting, neighbors approached me privately with surprising revelations. "She's been calling everyone," whispered Janet Morrison from Oak Street. "Claims we'll face personal liability if we don't support land inspections. Says our insurance could be canceled if we harbor dangerous property violations." That night, staring at my ceiling fan's hypnotic rotation, the taste of metallic fear filled my mouth. Those aerial photos haunted me. Too recent, too detailed, too expensive for casual HOA business. Someone had invested serious money targeting my property specifically. Then the breakthrough hit me like voltage through wet hands. I researched the photo metadata the next morning and discovered something that changed everything. Those aerial images weren't commissioned by the HOA. They were ordered by Meridian Development Group, a commercial property developer. The same company that had been quietly buying properties throughout Pinewood Springs for the past year. The smell of fresh printer ink filled my home office as I connected the dots. Brenda wasn't just harassing random homeowners. She was systematically targeting properties that Meridian wanted to acquire, force out resistant owners through bogus violations, then swoop in with below-market purchase offers for problem properties. I called Hannah immediately with my discovery. "This isn't random HOA enforcement," I explained. "It's organized harassment designed to force property sales." "That's conspiracy," Hannah replied, her voice sharpening with professional interest. "If you can prove coordination between Brenda and a development company, this becomes criminal fraud, not just neighbor disputes." My research that week uncovered Brenda's pattern. Every property she'd targeted with violations had received unsolicited purchase offers from Meridian within 60 days. Mr. Peterson sold after 2 months of harassment. Jessica considered selling before her sister loaned her money for legal defense. But Brenda's biggest mistake was underestimating my investigative skills. While she'd been researching my property for months, I discovered her own land contained multiple code violations that actually mattered. Unpermitted deck addition, illegal patio enclosure, oversized storage shed violating height restrictions. The irony tasted sweeter than Mrs. Vanessa's green tea. The woman demanding to inspect my land had been breaking actual building codes for years. I filed formal complaints with county code enforcement about every unpermitted structure on Brenda's property. Within days, official municipal inspectors, with real authority and actual badges, were documenting genuine violations on her land. The sound of my security system's motion alerts became constant as Brenda's surveillance intensified. Stan now conducted daily perimeter patrols with professional measuring equipment, photographing any changes to my landscaping, documenting when I came and went. But the final escalation arrived via process server. Emergency land access order. Municipal authorities require immediate property inspection to assess community safety violations. Refusal will result in legal action, including potential property seizure. Property seizure? The woman was claiming municipal authority she'd never possessed, threatening government action she'd never requested. The taste of anger mixed with determination as I realized Brenda had just committed her biggest legal mistake yet, impersonating government authority in writing. Time to document every fraudulent claim and build a case that would end her reign of terror permanently. 2 weeks later, Brenda declared total war. I was installing new circuits for the Rodriguez family when my phone erupted with calls from angry city departments: zoning, business licensing, environmental health, fire marshal. Someone had filed urgent complaints about illegal commercial land operations at my address. The acrid smell of electrical tape mixed with cold sweat as I realized the devastating scope of her attack. Brenda had weaponized municipal bureaucracy against me, filing false reports with every department that could possibly destroy my electrical business. Mr. Thompson, we've received serious complaints about unauthorized commercial land use, announced the grim-faced zoning inspector who arrived that afternoon. Multiple allegations of hazardous material storage, unpermitted electrical work, and potential environmental violations requiring immediate professional assessment. Each department demanded expensive inspections, $300 to $500 per evaluation, environmental testing for chemical contamination, fire safety assessment for dangerous electrical storage, business license verification for illegal commercial land operations. The financial noose tightened around my throat. Between divorce payments, mortgage, and Sophia's expenses, I couldn't afford $3,000 in bogus inspection fees designed to bankrupt my family into submission. But Brenda's psychological assault escalated beyond financial warfare. Her Pinewood Property Protection Alliance Facebook group now posted daily updates about my dangerous land violations with professional quality photos taken from multiple angles. The comment threads read like a lynch mob organizing. Electrical contamination threatening our children's health. Property values crashing because of commercial neighbor. Insurance companies investigating neighborhood liability exposure. Mrs. Vanessa delivered disturbing intelligence during our evening coffee ritual. The bitter taste of green tea couldn't mask my growing rage as she reported Brenda's house-to-house propaganda campaign. She's telling everyone they face personal lawsuits if they don't support immediate land inspections, Mrs. Vanessa whispered, her weathered hands trembling around the ceramic mug. Claims your electrical business creates community-wide liability exposure that could cancel everyone's homeowner insurance. The woman was spreading pure terror through manufactured crisis. Sophia had started avoiding the school bus stop, taking longer routes to avoid neighbors who now viewed our family as toxic contamination threatening their property values. Stan's harassment evolved from measuring to military-grade surveillance. My security cameras captured him conducting compliance patrols 4 times daily, photographing any changes to my garden beds, timing Sophia's school schedule, documenting our family's daily routines like a federal investigator. The sound of camera shutters clicking from my property line became constant background noise to our lives. Wednesday brought environmental health inspectors demanding soil samples from my garden. Thursday delivered fire department officials investigating reports of electrical fire hazards. Friday saw business license investigators threatening to shut down my electrical work for unlicensed commercial land operations. Each bogus complaint triggered official responses that cost me work hours, inspection fees, and professional reputation. Clients started canceling appointments after hearing rumors about municipal investigations into my business practices. But during this bureaucratic nightmare, I discovered something that changed everything. While researching municipal complaint procedures to defend myself, I learned that filing false reports with government agencies constitutes criminal fraud. Every bogus complaint Brenda submitted created documented evidence of her criminal activity, recorded in official municipal databases with her name attached. The taste of hope mixed with determination as I realized she'd been building her own criminal case through months of documented lies to government officials. Then came Brenda's most shocking escalation yet. Friday afternoon, a process server delivered what looked like official federal documentation. Emergency Environmental Protection Agency enforcement action. Immediate land inspection required to assess community contamination risk. Refusal constitutes federal environmental crime punishable by imprisonment and $500,000 fine. Federal EPA involvement? My hands actually shook reading the document. The paperwork looked professionally manufactured with convincing federal seals and legal terminology. Most homeowners would surrender immediately rather than face supposed federal criminal charges and $500,000 fines. But something felt wrong. Real federal agencies don't deliver urgent notices through private process servers wearing polo shirts. Legitimate EPA investigations follow specific documented procedures that this notice violated completely. Hannah's reaction confirmed my suspicions when I called her immediately. "This is federal impersonation," she said, her voice sharp with professional alarm. "Impersonating EPA authority is a serious federal crime that could trigger FBI investigation." The smell of fresh printer ink filled my home office as I documented this latest escalation. Brenda had just crossed from local harassment into federal felony territory, potentially facing years in federal prison for impersonating environmental authority. That evening, my security system captured the most damning evidence yet. Brenda and Stan conducting what they called pre-enforcement environmental assessment, wearing fake EPA inspector badges while attempting to collect soil samples from my garden beds. Every second recorded in high definition. Game over. She'd committed multiple federal felonies on camera while building evidence for her own prosecution. But Brenda wasn't finished. The final invitation arrived Saturday morning. Emergency Community Safety Meeting, Sunday, 2 p.m. Federal environmental representatives present to address dangerous land contamination requiring immediate community action. Federal representatives? The woman was planning to impersonate federal officials in front of 30 witnesses. Perfect. Sunday's neighborhood meeting would be Brenda's public execution, and I'd make sure every neighbor witnessed her complete destruction. Saturday night, sleep was impossible. The taste of bitter coffee mixed with mounting dread as I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by 3 months of Brenda's harassment documents. Every fake inspection demand, every bogus violation notice, every threatening letter spread across the wooden surface like evidence of psychological warfare. Something had been nagging at me for weeks. Inconsistencies in Brenda's authority claims that I'd been too overwhelmed to examine systematically. Hannah's words echoed in my memory. Real authority leaves verifiable paper trails. Fake authority crumbles under scrutiny. Time to scrutinize everything. At 2 a.m., the smell of fresh printer toner filled my home office as I began methodically fact-checking every claim Brenda had made. I started with her credentials, calling the State Real Estate Commission's 24-hour verification line. The automated response was swift and devastating. No licensee found under that name. No regulatory position titled Property Compliance Director exists in this state. Brenda Whitmore had 0 official credentials for anything she'd been doing to my family. But my research uncovered something far more sinister than fake authority. County property records revealed a disturbing pattern that made my stomach churn with the realization of organized criminal conspiracy. Every property Brenda had targeted with violations had received unsolicited purchase offers from development companies within 60 days. The elderly Peterson sold after 2 months of harassment for $30,000 below market value to Meridian Development Group. Single mom Jessica was still fighting $4,000 in bogus fines while fielding pressure calls from property buyers. The texture of these official documents felt different in my hands. Crisp, legitimate, damning. Brenda wasn't enforcing HOA rules. She was running a systematic property acquisition scam, using fake authority to terrorize vulnerable families into selling below market value to her development partners. My Freedom of Information Act requests painted an even uglier picture. Brenda had filed over 40 false complaints with municipal agencies in 12 months, targeting 17 different properties. Each fraudulent report triggered expensive inspections and legal fees designed to financially exhaust homeowners into submission. The sound of rain against my office window provided an oddly comforting backdrop as I documented the scope of her criminal enterprise. Mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit extortion. Brenda had been running a federal crime spree while hiding behind fake HOA authority, but examining her latest EPA enforcement action revealed the most shocking evidence yet. Real EPA documents follow strict federal formatting protocols, use standardized legal language, and include verifiable case numbers linked to national databases. Brenda's document violated every federal procedure for environmental enforcement. The seals were poorly reproduced graphics downloaded from government websites. The legal citations referenced regulations that didn't exist. She'd been impersonating federal environmental authority with documents so fraudulent they wouldn't fool a community college paralegal student. Monday morning, Hannah's reaction to my evidence was professional euphoria mixed with genuine outrage. "This is organized criminal conspiracy spanning multiple federal crimes," she explained, her voice sharp with prosecutor instincts. "Mail fraud, impersonating federal officers, extortion. Brenda's facing potential decades in federal prison." "What about the other victims?" I asked, thinking of Peterson's lost savings and Jessica's mounting legal bills. "Class action lawsuit potential, multiple families systematically defrauded through coordinated harassment scheme. We're talking hundreds of thousands in compensatory damages, plus punitive damages that could bankrupt her completely." But one crucial element was missing from my defensive strategy. During 3 months of fighting Brenda's fake authority, I'd never actually researched what legitimate powers existed over my property. I'd been so focused on proving her fraud that I'd never verified what real restrictions, if any, actually applied to my land. Tuesday afternoon, I drove to the county clerk's office with crystal clear purpose. Obtain complete copies of my property deed and examine every recorded covenant affecting my land. Whatever I discovered in that deed would determine whether Sunday's confrontation would be my vindication or Brenda's final victory. Tuesday afternoon at the county clerk's office felt like stepping into a legal time machine. The musty smell of decades-old documents mixed with floor wax as Clerk Margaret Wilson pulled my property file from storage, a thick folder containing 35 years of legal history. "Here's your original subdivision plat and all recorded covenants," she said, spreading documents across the worn research table. The paper felt substantial, official, nothing like Brenda's flimsy photocopied threats that had terrorized my family for months. I started methodically, reading every page of legal language that had seemed like boring formalities at closing. Original subdivision plans from 1987, HOA establishment documents from 1988, covenant recordings affecting lots 2 to 47, blocks B through F. Wait, lots 2 to 47? What about lot 1? My heart rate accelerated as I searched for references to my corner property. Then I found it, buried in paragraph 12 of the original subdivision agreement, language that made my hands shake with realization. Lot 1, Block A is expressly exempt from any homeowner association covenants, conditions, or restrictions established for remaining subdivision parcels, preserving original agricultural and workshop use rights. I read it again. Then a third time, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead while the magnitude sank in. My property wasn't just protected from Brenda's fake authority. It was completely exempt from any HOA authority that might legitimately exist. The corner lot had been specifically carved out from all association jurisdiction before covenants were ever recorded. The taste of municipal coffee from the clerk's break room couldn't mask my growing excitement as Margaret explained the history. Previous owner, Mrs. Vanessa's late husband, was the original subdivision surveyor. He negotiated agricultural exemption for this corner lot when the development was planned, wanted to keep chickens and maintain his workshop. Everything Brenda had claimed as violations was specifically protected under my deed exemption. Vegetable gardens, workshop operations, even chicken coops if I wanted them. My property had been legally shielded from HOA interference for 35 years. That evening, I called Hannah with the nuclear discovery. The sound of papers shuffling filled our phone conversation as she processed the implications. "This transforms everything," she said, her attorney instincts sharpening with excitement. Brenda hasn't just been using fraudulent authority, she's been harassing property that's explicitly exempt from any HOA jurisdiction. That's criminal trespassing, fraud, and stalking under multiple state statutes. But instead of immediately confronting Brenda, we developed a more devastating strategy. Wednesday morning in Hannah's office, the smell of leather-bound law books providing an oddly comforting backdrop, we planned Sunday's trap with prosecutorial precision. Rather than revealing my exemption immediately, I'd let Brenda perform her planned federal impersonation while secretly documenting everything for criminal evidence. People who commit fraud need enough rope to hang themselves completely. Sunday would provide that rope in front of 30 witnesses. I spent Wednesday upgrading my documentation arsenal, professional-grade recording equipment positioned throughout my backyard. Multiple camera angles to capture every moment of Brenda's federal impersonation performance. Audio backup systems ensuring nothing would be missed. The key insight from my research was understanding how property exemptions work legally. Most homeowners assume they're subject to any HOA in their subdivision without examining their actual deed language. But property rights are specific, detailed, and individually negotiated. Always verify what restrictions actually apply to your specific lot before accepting anyone's authority claims. Thursday brought intelligence gathering through Mrs. Vanessa's neighborhood network. Brenda's telling everyone that federal environmental officials will attend Sunday's meeting, she reported over our evening tea. The ceramic cup felt warm in my hands as she continued. Claims they have emergency seizure powers for contaminated properties. Federal impersonation in front of the entire community. Brenda was planning to commit her most serious crimes yet with maximum witnesses. Friday involved coordinating key attendees for optimal impact. City Councilman Dave Martinez agreed to attend as my guest, ensuring municipal witness to federal crimes. Local news reporter Sarah Kim would discover the meeting while visiting her neighborhood aunt. Hannah prepared legal documentation for immediate post-meeting action. Criminal complaints ready for filing Monday morning. Federal fraud reports completed and waiting for submission. Civil lawsuit papers naming every participant in the property acquisition scheme. The sound of my paper shredder filled Friday evening as I destroyed months of Brenda's threatening letters. No longer evidence of successful intimidation, just worthless paper from a woman who'd never possessed any authority over my exempt property. Saturday night, I arranged final preparations with methodical precision. Property deed ready for dramatic presentation, but not too early in Brenda's performance. Recording equipment tested and positioned. Witness attendance confirmed. Legal counterstrike prepared for Monday's devastating follow-up. Most importantly, I practiced staying calm during whatever federal authority charade Brenda planned. Let her commit maximum crimes before revealing the deed exemption that would end her harassment career permanently. The taste of anticipation mixed with hard-earned confidence as Sunday approached. 3 months of psychological warfare had inadvertently taught me invaluable lessons about property rights, criminal fraud detection, and the crucial difference between real authority and elaborate intimidation schemes. Tomorrow, Brenda would give her final performance as a fake authority figure. After that, she'd just be defendant number 1 in a federal fraud prosecution. Time to reclaim my family's peace and safety. Sunday morning arrived with perfect irony, bright sunshine and the smell of fresh coffee brewing as I prepared for Brenda's final performance. She had no idea she was walking into a trap that would destroy her criminal operation permanently. My security cameras captured her preparation ritual starting at 8 a.m. Brenda and Stan loading official-looking boxes into their cars, wearing what appeared to be government-issued badges and lanyards. The woman was planning full-scale federal impersonation with props that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. But Saturday night had brought an unexpected escalation that revealed just how desperate she'd become. My motion sensors triggered at 11 p.m., capturing Brenda and 2 unknown men attempting to plant something in my garden beds. The high-definition footage showed them burying small containers while wearing hazmat gloves, clearly trying to create evidence of environmental contamination for Sunday's fake federal inspection. The taste of cold fury mixed with satisfaction as I realized she'd just committed evidence tampering and criminal trespassing on camera while building the case that would send her to federal prison. Morning brought more surveillance showing the true scope of her planned deception. A white van parked across the street with Environmental Assessment Services magnetic signs, fake company, fake credentials, fake everything. Two men in official-looking uniforms unloaded equipment that resembled EPA testing devices, but were probably purchased from a scientific supply catalog. Stan practiced his role as EPA liaison officer, while Brenda coached him on federal environmental terminology. My audio equipment captured every word of their fraud rehearsal, including specific plans to demand immediate property seizure for public safety emergency. The smell of bacon filled my kitchen as I cooked breakfast for Sophia, maintaining normal Sunday routines while my house transformed into a surveillance command center. Hidden cameras recorded every angle of my backyard where Brenda planned her federal authority performance. "Dad, you seem different today," Sophia observed, syrup dripping from her fork as she studied my face. "More relaxed." "Just ready for this nightmare to end, sweetheart," I replied, which was completely true. After today, Brenda would never threaten our family again. Mrs. Vanessa arrived early with intelligence about Brenda's final preparations. "She's been calling neighbors all morning," she reported, settling into my kitchen chair with her usual cup of green tea, claiming federal agents discovered immediate environmental hazards requiring emergency community meeting. The woman was building maximum drama for her federal impersonation finale. Noon brought the arrival of my secret weapons. City Councilman Dave Martinez parked casually down the street, ready to witness municipal authority impersonation. News reporter Sarah Kim positioned herself at her aunt's house with a clear view of my backyard, cameras ready to document federal crimes in progress. Hannah arrived exactly at 1 p.m. carrying an innocent-looking briefcase containing legal documents that would destroy Brenda's life Monday morning. Criminal complaints, federal fraud reports, civil lawsuit papers, everything ready for immediate filing after today's evidence-gathering session. "Remember," Hannah whispered as neighbors began gathering in my backyard, "let her commit maximum federal crimes before revealing the deed exemption. We want overwhelming evidence for prosecutors." The texture of my property deed felt like dynamite in my kitchen drawer, waiting for the perfect moment to detonate Brenda's entire criminal operation. 1:30 p.m. brought Brenda's grand entrance. She marched into my backyard wearing an official-looking EPA Regional Inspector badge, followed by Stan in EPA Liaison Officer uniform, and two fake federal agents carrying clipboards with EPA letterhead. The sound of camera shutters filled the air as neighbors documented what they believed was legitimate federal enforcement action. Perfect witnesses for fraud prosecution. "Thank you all for attending this emergency environmental assessment," Brenda announced to the 30-plus neighbors gathered on my lawn. "EPA testing has revealed immediate contamination hazards requiring federal intervention to protect community safety." Her fake federal agents began setting up equipment while Stan distributed official-looking documents explaining emergency seizure procedures for contaminated properties. Every word, every gesture, every prop creating documented evidence of federal impersonation. "Mr. Thompson's electrical business has created soil contamination requiring immediate federal remediation," Brenda continued, her voice carrying the authority of someone who believed her own lies. "Property seizure proceedings will commence immediately to prevent community exposure." Property seizure. In front of 30 witnesses, using fake federal authority. Game over. The taste of victory mixed with 3 months of accumulated anger as Brenda sealed her fate with each fraudulent claim. She was committing multiple federal felonies while my recording equipment captured everything in high definition. But she wasn't finished. The final escalation was yet to come. "Federal law requires immediate evacuation of this contaminated property," one fake agent announced, approaching my house with official-looking paperwork. "Environmental Protection Agency emergency powers authorize immediate seizure for public safety." They were actually attempting to seize my house using fake federal authority in front of 30 witnesses and hidden cameras. Time to end this performance and reveal the truth that would destroy Brenda's criminal empire forever. Additionally, Brenda continued her federal authority charade, pulling out laminated documents that sparkled with fake government seals. EPA emergency protocols require immediate property access for hazardous material assessment. The fake federal agents approached my house carrying equipment designed to look official, devices that were probably purchased from scientific supply catalogs, but would fool most homeowners into believing they were witnessing legitimate federal enforcement. "Mr. Thompson, federal law mandates your cooperation with emergency environmental assessment," Stan announced, his new EPA liaison officer badge catching sunlight as he gestured toward my workshop. "Obstruction of federal investigation constitutes criminal violation punishable by imprisonment." The audacity was breathtaking. They were threatening federal criminal charges while committing actual federal crimes in front of 30 witnesses and multiple hidden recording devices. My neighbors shifted uncomfortably as Brenda's performance escalated beyond typical HOA disputes into apparent federal emergency territory. The smell of afternoon sunshine on grass mixed with growing tension as families realized they were witnessing what appeared to be government property seizure. Soil contamination levels require immediate evacuation, one fake agent announced, approaching my front door with official paperwork. Environmental Protection Agency emergency authority supersedes all property rights during public health crisis. But then Brenda made her most dangerous move yet. Personal escalation that revealed the true malicious intent behind her federal authority masquerade. Furthermore, she declared to the gathered crowd, Child Protective Services has been notified about unsafe environmental exposure to minor residents. Her eyes locked on mine with predatory satisfaction. Federal environmental violations constitute child endangerment requiring immediate intervention. Threatening my daughter, using fake federal authority to terrorize my family about child custody. The taste of parental rage filled my mouth as I realized Brenda had just crossed from property fraud into direct threats against my child's safety. Every parent in that crowd understood the implications. False CPS reports designed to separate families through manufactured crisis. Mrs. Vanessa's weathered hand gripped my arm, feeling my tension spike toward dangerous levels. Her touch reminded me to stay calm. Let Brenda finish her criminal performance before springing the trap that would end her terror campaign forever. Complete property assessment requires interior inspection of all structures, Stan continued, approaching my workshop with measuring tape and camera equipment. Federal emergency protocols override local property rights during environmental crisis. They wanted inside my workshop using fake federal authority. Perfect criminal evidence captured in high definition. The sound of official-looking equipment being arranged filled my backyard as Brenda's team prepared for comprehensive property inspection using fabricated EPA emergency powers. Neighbors whispered among themselves, some expressing concern about apparent federal environmental crisis in their neighborhood. But the most damning evidence came when Brenda produced what appeared to be federal court documents authorizing immediate property seizure. Environmental emergency warrants signed by Federal District Judge Morrison authorize immediate property confiscation pending contamination remediation, she announced, waving papers that looked professionally manufactured with convincing federal seals and legal formatting. Federal court impersonation. The woman had just committed her most serious crime yet, fabricating federal judicial orders to steal private property. My recording equipment captured every word, every document, every criminal claim, while 30 neighbors served as witnesses to systematic federal authority impersonation designed to terrorize families into property surrender. Mr. Thompson, you have 30 minutes to gather essential belongings before federal seizure proceedings commence, the lead fake agent declared, clipboard ready for documentation. Environmental Protection Agency emergency authority requires immediate evacuation for public safety. 30 minutes. They were actually attempting to seize my house using fabricated federal emergency powers with fake court orders and impersonated federal agents. The texture of my property deed in the kitchen drawer felt like nuclear weapons waiting for deployment. Time to end this criminal performance and reveal the truth that would send Brenda to federal prison for years. But first, maximum criminal evidence. What specific contamination was discovered? I asked calmly, ensuring my audio equipment captured every fraudulent response. Electrical waste contamination exceeding federal safety standards, Brenda replied confidently. Soil samples reveal hazardous chemical levels requiring immediate federal intervention. Soil samples she'd planted Saturday night while my security cameras recorded everything. Which federal regulations establish EPA seizure authority? I continued, building prosecutorial evidence with each question. Environmental Emergency Protocols Section 47 authorize immediate property confiscation during public health crisis, Stan answered, reading from fabricated documents that violated every federal procedure for legitimate EPA enforcement. Perfect. Maximum federal crimes documented with multiple witnesses and comprehensive audio-visual evidence. The smell of impending victory mixed with 3 months of accumulated justice as I prepared to walk into my house and retrieve the document that would obliterate Brenda's criminal operation permanently. I need to check something inside, I announced to the crowd, my voice steady with confidence that only comes from holding absolute truth. time to get my property deed and destroy Brenda's entire criminal enterprise in front of the community she'd terrorized for months. I walked into my house with deliberate calm, the sound of Brenda's fake federal agents rearranging their equipment filtering through my kitchen windows. 30 neighbors waited in my backyard while she committed multiple federal crimes on camera, building the evidence that would send her to prison for years. The wooden drawer slid open with a soft scrape as I retrieved my property deed, the document that would end this nightmare permanently. The paper felt substantial in my hands, official and legitimate in ways Brenda's fake authority could never match. When I returned to my backyard, the sight was surreal. Brenda stood behind a folding table covered with fake EPA documents, wearing her fraudulent inspector badge like military decoration. Stan measured my garden beds with official-looking equipment while 2 fake federal agents documented hazardous environmental conditions with professional cameras. "Mr. Thompson," Brenda announced as I approached, "federal law requires your immediate cooperation with emergency environmental assessment. Refusal constitutes obstruction of federal investigation." The gathered neighbors watched with mixture of concern and confusion as what appeared to be legitimate federal enforcement played out in my backyard. Mrs. Vanessa stood near the fence, her weathered face showing anticipation of the justice about to unfold. "Before we proceed," I said calmly, my voice carrying clearly across the yard, "I'd like everyone to understand exactly what authority you're claiming here." "Environmental Protection Agency emergency powers," Brenda replied confidently, gesturing toward her fake federal team. "Federal environmental law supersedes all local property rights during public health emergencies." "And this authority comes from where exactly?" I asked, ensuring my hidden cameras captured every fraudulent response. "Federal Environmental Emergency Protocols," Stan chimed in, waving his fabricated EPA documents. "Section 47 authorizes immediate property seizure for community protection." "Perfect. Maximum federal crimes documented with 30 witnesses." "Well, that's fascinating," I said, unfolding my property deed with theatrical precision. "Because I have something here that might interest everyone." The crowd leaned forward as I held up the official document, its government seals and legal language immediately recognizable as legitimate authority, the kind Brenda had been faking for months. "This is my actual property deed," I announced, my voice strengthening with 3 months of accumulated vindication. "And I'd like my attorney to explain what it says about HOA authority over this land." Hannah stepped forward from the crowd, revealing her professional identity for the first time. "I'm Hannah Rodriguez, licensed real estate attorney," she announced, "and I can read the relevant section for everyone present." Brenda's confident expression began cracking as Hannah unfolded the deed and located the crucial paragraph. "Lot 1, Block A is expressly exempt from any homeowner association covenants, conditions, or restrictions established for remaining subdivision parcels," Hannah read clearly. "This property maintains original agricultural and workshop use rights independent of any association jurisdiction." The silence was deafening. 30 neighbors processed the implications while Brenda's face cycled through confusion, denial, and growing panic. "Furthermore," I continued, my voice carrying the authority of absolute truth, "Brenda Whitmore has been impersonating federal officials, filing false reports with government agencies, and attempting property seizure using fabricated federal authority." I gestured toward her fake EPA team. "These aren't federal agents. This isn't EPA emergency enforcement. This is criminal fraud being committed in front of 30 witnesses while cameras record everything." City Councilman Dave Martinez stepped forward, revealing his municipal authority. "I can confirm no federal environmental emergency exists at this address," he announced. "EPA has no emergency seizure proceedings in this neighborhood." The fake federal agents began backing toward their van as neighbors realized they'd been witnessing systematic criminal impersonation, not legitimate government enforcement. "You see," I continued, my voice steady with hard-earned confidence, "Brenda has been running a property acquisition scam using fake authority to terrorize families into selling their homes below market value to development companies." News reporter Sarah Kim emerged from her aunt's backyard with camera rolling, documenting the exposure of what would become the evening news lead story about HOA fraud and federal impersonation. "Every inspection demand, every violation notice, every threat against my family, all criminal fraud," I declared. "She never had any authority over my property. None. My land is exempt from HOA jurisdiction and always has been." Brenda attempted to argue, claiming the deed was fake, but her fake federal agents had already fled to their van and were driving away rapidly, leaving her without props or backup. The FBI will be investigating federal impersonation charges Monday morning, Hannah announced, along with fraud, extortion, and conspiracy charges for the systematic harassment of multiple families. Watching Brenda's complete authority collapse in front of the community she'd terrorized for months provided the sweetest vindication imaginable. Justice served, property rights restored, criminal exposed, neighborhood liberated. The immediate aftermath was beautiful chaos. Neighbors who'd lived in fear of Brenda's fake authority suddenly understood they'd been watching criminal fraud unfold for months. The smell of afternoon barbecue returned to my backyard as families stayed to celebrate liberation from systematic harassment. "I can't believe we let her terrorize us," whispered Janet Morrison, shaking her head while her kids played on my lawn again for the first time in months. She never had any real authority. Mrs. Vanessa squeezed my arm with satisfaction that ran deeper than words. "Your deed exemption protects more than property," she said quietly. "It protects principle of standing up to bullies." Within a week, Brenda had quietly moved out of Pinewood Springs to avoid federal prosecution. Her fake EPA equipment disappeared, her fabricated documents vanished, her property acquisition scheme collapsed completely. Stan returned the illegal inspection fees he'd collected from other neighbors and issued public apology for his role in the harassment campaign. Hannah filed criminal complaints with federal authorities Monday morning. The FBI opened investigation into Brenda's systematic fraud scheme targeting 17 different properties. Multiple families joined civil lawsuits seeking damages for months of psychological harassment and financial losses. But the most satisfying outcome was community transformation. Neighbors voted to dissolve the ineffective HOA that had enabled Brenda's fraud, establishing instead a simple neighborhood association focused on social events rather than property enforcement. Annual barbecues replaced inspection demands. Garden sharing programs replaced violation notices. Community support replaced systematic intimidation. 3 other families discovered their properties contained similar deed exemptions that protected them from HOA overreach. Mr. Peterson received compensation for his forced house sale below market value. Jessica's bogus landscaping fines were declared fraudulent and eliminated completely. My electrical business thrived through neighbor referrals and positive word of mouth about standing up to fake authority. Property values increased as the neighborhood became known for community cooperation rather than harassment enforcement. 6 months later, something unexpected happened that proved good ultimately triumphs over evil. Hannah and I started dating, our relationship built on mutual respect and shared commitment to justice. Fighting fraud together had revealed character traits more valuable than any dating app algorithm. Sophia approved enthusiastically, especially after Hannah helped her research colleges with strong legal programs. The local news investigation into Brenda's fraud scheme led to county policy changes requiring verification of all HOA authority claims before municipal departments respond to complaints. My case became textbook example of property rights protection and fraud detection. Most importantly, I established annual Property Rights Awareness Day every June, teaching homeowners throughout the region about deed research, authority verification, and fraud prevention. The taste of community education mixed with preventive justice proved more satisfying than individual revenge. We created scholarship fund for local students pursuing legal education, funded by recovered fraudulent inspection fees and civil lawsuit settlements. 5 students have received support for law school, carrying forward the principle that knowledge defeats intimidation. My property became model for sustainable land use that respects both individual rights and community welfare. Sophia's expanded garden now supplies vegetables for neighborhood food sharing program. My workshop offers free electrical safety training for other homeowners. The sound of genuine laughter fills neighborhood gatherings throughout the year, replacing the tension and fear that Brenda's harassment had created. Children play freely across property lines, while adults share resources and support each other's success. Here's what I learned fighting this battle. Bullies count on you not knowing your rights, not researching your actual deed, and not demanding verification of their authority claims. But when you do your homework, document everything, and stand your ground with factual evidence, even the most elaborate fraud schemes collapse under scrutiny.